The words cut through the air like a knife. You don't get to sit at the table. My daughter-in-law stood in the doorway of my own dining room, pointing at me like I was some kind of unwelcome guest at Thanksgiving dinner. Behind her, my son Marcus shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes, as she announced their decision to restructure family dynamics in the house I'd owned for 38 years. I stayed perfectly calm, because what they didn't know was that I had already removed the table entirely, along with every other piece of furniture they'd been counting on inheriting. The moving truck was arriving in 48 hours. You're probably wondering how a 67-year-old woman ended up being barred from her own dining table by her son's wife in her own house, and why I'm standing here completely composed while my daughter-in-law declares I'm no longer part of their family gatherings. Let me take you back 6 weeks. Because what Jessica forgot is that I didn't spend 40 years as a real estate attorney without learning how to protect what's mine. And this house, still 100% legally mine. My name is Patricia Warren. I'm 67 years old, a retired real estate attorney who spent 4 decades closing deals, drafting ironclad contracts, and teaching people how to protect their property rights. I've negotiated million-dollar transactions and prevented countless fraud attempts. But nothing in my career prepared me for the moment I discovered my own son was plotting to force me out of the house I built with my late husband. 6 weeks ago, on a Friday afternoon around 3:30 p.m., I discovered a folder in Marcus's home office, the room that used to be my husband David's study. Real estate appraisal documents showing my home's current market value, $840,000. A handwritten timeline in Jessica's precise script. Mom moves to senior living, January. Renovations begin, February. List property, May. Target sale price, $875K. At the bottom, highlighted in yellow, net after minimal senior housing costs, $780K split. My chest tightened as I photographed every page with trembling hands. They hadn't just discussed this casually over dinner. They'd hired an appraiser, researched facilities, created a business plan for displacing me. They were spending my money before I was even gone. But what I overheard 3 nights later made those documents look like innocent planning. I started paying closer attention to their private conversations. On Monday evening, voices drifted from the master bedroom, the room David and I shared for 33 years before he passed. Jessica's tone was sharp and transactional. "Your mother is becoming difficult. We need to establish she's no longer capable of managing the house or finances. My brother works in elder care assessment. He knows how to document these things properly." Marcus's voice was quieter, hesitant. "She seems completely fine, sharp as ever." Jessica's response was ice cold. "People believe what's documented, Marcus. A few missed bill payments, some concerning behavior reports, and suddenly she needs oversight. We frame it as love and protection." That's when I understood this wasn't just opportunistic greed. It was a calculated campaign to manufacture incompetence, discredit me systematically, and steal everything David and I built together. They'd been engineering this for months. But the evidence I discovered 4 days later would reveal they'd already started the execution phase. 4 days later, I found the most damning evidence of all. Hidden inside Jessica's laptop bag, which she'd carelessly left on the kitchen counter, was a printed email exchange with Sunset Meadows Senior Living. The consultation receipt was dated 5 weeks earlier. Attached were family concern forms alleging I had shown signs of memory loss, difficulty managing household tasks, and increased confusion about finances. Every single word was a fabrication. I had never missed a bill payment, never forgotten an appointment, never showed any confusion whatsoever. They were creating a false medical narrative before I even knew I was under attack. I sat at that kitchen counter for a long time, staring at my son's signature on those forms. The same signature I'd watched him practice for his college applications, the scholarship essays I'd helped him edit. Now he was using it to forge lies about my mental competency. That's when I realized I had spent 40 years drafting contracts that protected people's property rights. Now, I needed to execute a legal defense strong enough to withstand family betrayal. The next morning, I made a decision. I wouldn't argue with them. I wouldn't plead for their reconsideration. I would do what I'd always done in my legal career: build documentation so airtight that no fraudulent claim could penetrate it. I contacted my former colleague and friend Helen Rodriguez, who now specialized in elder law and estate protection. When I showed her the documents and forms, her expression turned grim. "Patricia," she said, her voice heavy with professional concern, "this is textbook elder abuse, financial exploitation with manufactured incompetence claims. You need immediate legal protection, and you need to document your capacity thoroughly." That afternoon, I began constructing the legal firewall that would demolish their scheme piece by piece. Over the next 6 weeks, I became a woman on a mission. I scheduled comprehensive cognitive assessments with 3 independent physicians, all documenting perfect mental capacity. I updated my estate documents with protections they didn't know existed. I installed security cameras throughout common areas of my home. I hired a property manager to document my flawless handling of household finances and maintenance. I created detailed logs of every conversation, every manipulative comment, every attempt to paint me as incompetent. And I waited, because I knew the confrontation was coming. And when Jessica stood in that dining room and declared I don't get to sit at the table, I would reveal I'd already removed the table entirely. But to understand why this moment felt like watching someone try to tear up a contract I'd spent decades perfectly, you need to know one thing. David and I built this house together from the ground up. It was 1987. We just closed on the empty lot, our first major investment as young attorneys. David drew the plans on our dining table, and I negotiated with every contractor, reviewed every permit, ensured every document was properly filed. We designed the master bedroom to face east for morning light. We built the study where we'd both work late reviewing cases. Every decision was deliberate, documented, protected. After David died 5 years ago from a sudden heart attack, this house became my anchor. I maintained his rose garden even when my back ached. I kept every room exactly as we designed it together. Marcus had moved across the country years before, visiting maybe once a year, always busy with his tech career. Until 8 months ago, when he showed up with suitcases, Jessica, and that soft, desperate voice explaining they needed to stay just temporarily while Marcus transitioned between jobs. I said yes because I remembered the boy who used to study at this dining table, who graduated law school like his parents, who once told me he wanted to protect people the way we did. I thought I was offering my son sanctuary during a difficult transition. I didn't realize I was giving predators access to their target. Now, standing in this dining room with my daughter-in-law declaring I had no place at my own table, I understood something with absolute clarity. This house was mine, fully paid off 30 years ago, titled solely in my name, protected by legal documents updated just last week that they knew nothing about. And they were about to discover exactly what happens when you try to defraud a real estate attorney. Helen spent 2 hours reviewing every document I'd discovered. She spread them across her conference table, the appraisal, the timeline, the fabricated concern forms, and her jaw tightened with each page. "Patricia, I've seen this pattern dozens of times," she said, her voice grave. "It's called systematic financial exploitation. They establish a false narrative of decline, manufacture evidence of incompetence, then petition for legal control. Once they have conservatorship or guardianship, they can liquidate everything. Victims lose their homes, their savings, their autonomy. And it's nearly impossible to reverse once the court grants authority." I felt my hands grip the armrests. "How do we stop it?" "We build an evidence fortress," Helen said. "We document your complete capacity, create legal protections they can't penetrate, and prepare for the inevitable challenge. Because once they realize you're onto them, they'll accelerate." That afternoon, we executed a multi-layered legal defense. First, Helen arranged comprehensive cognitive assessments with 3 independent physicians: Dr. Sarah Chen, a geriatric neurologist; Dr. Michael Okonkwo, a neuropsychologist; Dr. Patricia Alvarez, a geriatric psychiatrist. Each conducted thorough evaluations, memory tests, executive function assessments, financial management capability reviews. Every result came back identical. Patient demonstrates cognitive function within normal limits for age. No evidence of memory impairment, confusion, or diminished capacity. Fully competent to manage personal and financial affairs. Helen filed notarized copies with the county recorder's office, creating an official record time-stamped before any guardianship petition could be filed. Second, we updated my estate documents with layers of protection Jessica and Marcus didn't know existed. Helen drafted a new living trust with an independent trustee, Helen herself, who would assume control only if 2 separate physicians certified incapacity. She added a durable power of attorney, designating my sister Caroline, who lived 3 states away, as my agent if I ever needed assistance. She included a healthcare directive, explicitly excluding Marcus and Jessica from any medical decision-making authority. Every document was notarized, witnessed, and filed. "These create a legal firewall," Helen explained. "Even if they somehow convinced a court you needed help, they can't access anything. The authority goes to people you trust who have 0 financial interest." Third, we installed security cameras. Not hidden, fully visible in every common area. Living room, kitchen, dining room, hallways. I informed Marcus and Jessica in writing. For home security purposes, I've installed monitoring systems in shared spaces. They couldn't object without seeming suspicious. The footage over the following weeks was damning. It showed me cooking meals, managing household tasks, handling correspondence, meeting with my accountant, and hosting my book club. It also showed Marcus and Jessica contributing nothing. No rent, no household help, no financial participation. Just 2 people living rent-free while plotting to steal the house. But the most critical discovery came 2 weeks later, when I found Jessica's laptop open on the dining table. She'd stepped out to take a phone call, leaving it unlocked. I photographed everything in 90 seconds. A folder labeled PW Transition Plan, my initials. Inside, detailed inventories of furniture with estimated resale values, screenshots of my bank account balances, she'd somehow accessed my passwords, and a spreadsheet titled Liquidation Timeline. But the emails made my blood run cold. One from Jessica to Marcus, dated 3 weeks earlier. Timeline needs to accelerate. The longer we wait, the more risk she catches on. I've contacted Stephen about getting the assessment paperwork started. Once we have documentation of concerning behavior, we file for emergency conservatorship. Judge won't question family looking out for elderly parent. We control everything within 60 days. House on market by spring. Marcus's response, "Are you sure this will work? She seems completely fine." Jessica's reply, "She won't seem fine once we have professional documentation saying otherwise. Stephen knows how to write these assessments, and emergency filings get fast-tracked. By the time she understands what's happening, it's already decided. Stop doubting. This is $800K we're talking about." I stood in that dining room, hands trembling, rereading those messages. They were talking about me like a business acquisition, a problem to be neutralized, an obstacle to liquidate. The temporary stay had been infiltration from the beginning. Every dinner conversation, every concerned question about my health, every offer to help with my finances, it was reconnaissance. I forwarded everything to Helen and printed copies for my files. Protecting someone means knowing which foundations are solid and which ones will crumble under pressure. Sometimes love means refusing to let people destroy themselves, or you, even if they're family. David would have told me to protect myself. So that's exactly what I did. I called my sister Caroline. "I need you to fly out here. It's Marcus and Jessica. I need you to witness what happens next." She booked a flight for the following week. I finalized arrangements with Helen. Updated property deed restrictions, secured storage unit, hired movers, created timeline. The walls were closing in on them. They just didn't know it yet. But I'd spent 40 years building cases on foundations of evidence and documented truth. This would be no different. It happened on a Tuesday morning at 10:15 a.m. I was in the kitchen making coffee. Sunlight streamed through the window above the sink, the window David and I had specifically positioned to catch morning light. Dust motes hung in the golden beams. It felt like the silence before a structure collapses. Marcus and Jessica entered together, synchronized like they'd rehearsed. Marcus's hands were stuffed in his pockets. Jessica's expression was cold and determined. My phone was already recording in my cardigan pocket. "Mom," Marcus started, his voice carefully gentle, "we need to talk about some concerns we've been having." Jessica cut him off, her tone clinical. "Patricia, we've noticed you've been struggling lately. Forgetfulness, confusion about finances, difficulty managing the house. We think it's time to consider more appropriate living arrangements for your safety." I set down my coffee mug with deliberate calm. I'm not forgetful. I manage everything perfectly well. Jessica pulled out a printed document. "We've documented incidents, missed appointments, unpaid bills, concerning behavior." She slid the paper across the counter toward me. Every word was fabricated. I picked up the document, scanned it, then looked directly at her. "These are lies. I've never missed an appointment or forgotten a bill payment in my life." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, you're not seeing it clearly." "That's part of the problem. We're trying to help." I reached into my cardigan pocket and placed my phone on the counter, recording light clearly visible. Then I opened the drawer behind me and pulled out the folder I'd prepared, the one containing everything they didn't know I'd found. "You mean help like this?" I laid out the first document. Real estate appraisal you commissioned without my knowledge. Timeline for moving me out and selling my house. The color drained from Marcus's face. I placed the second set of documents. Emails with senior living facilities, fabricated concern forms alleging cognitive decline I don't have. Jessica's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. I placed the third set. And my personal favorite, emails between the two of you discussing how to accelerate your plan, manufacture evidence, and gain control within 60 days. Your words, Jessica, $800K we're talking about. The silence was absolute. Marcus stammered, "Mom, you went through our private—" "I found evidence in my house of plans to commit elder abuse and financial exploitation against me." My voice was steady, hard. "Every document here is proof of fraud." Jessica's mask cracked. Her voice turned venomous. "You ungrateful old woman. We've been taking care of you, living here to make sure you're safe, and this is how you repay us? You've been living rent-free for 8 months while plotting to steal my home and declare me incompetent." I met her eyes without flinching. That's when Marcus exploded. "Fine. You want to know the truth? You're in the way, Mom. This house is worth a fortune, and you're just sitting here alone wasting it. We have a right to our inheritance." Jessica shouted, her voice shaking with rage. "You don't get to sit at the table. This is our family now, our decisions. You're just an obstacle." I let the silence settle. Then I said quietly, "The table is already gone." Marcus blinked. "What?" "The dining table. The furniture you've been cataloging for resale. I removed all of it. It's in a storage unit under my name, along with everything else you plan to liquidate." I paused. "The moving truck arrives in 48 hours. I'm transferring possession of this house to a trust with my sister Caroline as trustee. You will never inherit it. And you have 72 hours to vacate." I picked up my phone and showed them the screen. "Everything you just said has been recorded, and Helen Rodriguez, my attorney specializing in elder law, is waiting outside with the sheriff's deputy who will be serving you with eviction notice and restraining order if you don't leave voluntarily." I walked to the front door and opened it. Helen stood on the porch, briefcase in hand, next to Deputy Morrison. "Marcus, Jessica, you have 3 days." They moved out in 2 days. Silent, efficient, humiliated. Marcus never met my eyes. Jessica hissed about lawyers, but her voice had lost all its venom. She knew I had them cornered legally. On the final afternoon, as they loaded the last boxes into their car, Marcus turned at the doorway. His eyes were red-rimmed. For just a second, I saw the boy who used to fall asleep at the dining table studying, the one who cried when David died. Then the door closed. Caroline arrived that evening. We sat in the living room where Marcus used to build Lego towers, where David read case files by the fireplace. "Did I do the right thing?" I asked. Caroline squeezed my hand. "Some people can't be saved from themselves." 6 weeks later, a letter arrived. Marcus's handwriting, less steady than before. "Mom, I don't expect forgiveness. Jessica convinced me this was justified, that we deserved it, that you wouldn't really suffer. I let financial desperation turn me into someone who could look at his own mother as an asset to liquidate instead of a person. I'm ashamed. I'm separating from Jessica, trying to rebuild from honest work. I just wanted you to know I finally see what I did." I read it 3 times. Then I wrote back 2 sentences. "I forgive you, but I cannot forget. When you're ready to rebuild our relationship on honesty, I'm willing to talk. But this house will never be yours." 9 months later, I sit on the porch of the house David and I built. Morning sun warms the wooden boards I refinished last spring. A postcard from Marcus sits on the side table. Colorado, working as a junior associate at a small law firm.
Living in a modest apartment. He sends updates weekly now. Doesn't ask for anything. Just reports of a life rebuilt from honest foundations. I haven't responded to most of them yet. Some repairs take time. Helen visits for coffee twice a week. Caroline calls every Sunday. My book club still meets here monthly. The house is quiet, but not lonely. Mine a den, in a way it never fully felt after David died. I keep his photo on the mantel. Sometimes I whisper to it, "Everything's protected now." True strength isn't found in the properties we own or the contracts we draft. It lives in knowing when to hold on, when to let go, and having the wisdom to tell the difference.